Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Welcome to Detox. I'm your host, Veronica Brockwell. So did you know that stress can actually heal you? I had no idea, but Dr. Michael Wild is here this evening, and he is going to tell us all about hormesis. So we're going to learn some fancy new words, and we are going to learn all about how this can work for us. Dr. Michael Wild, he is a chiropractic physician, a functional medicine practitioner, and a certified cellular and detoxification specialist. And he is with us this evening, along with his dog, Ralphie. Please welcome to the V-Talks. Where are we? Where are we? Here we go. Dr. Michael Wild.
I'm in here, I swear. I'm here.
I know. I was like, what happened?
I'm glad you found me.
I know. Sometimes it gets a little glitchy. I'm like, oh, hi.
That's the stress of modern technology, but I'm not sure if that's going to make us healthier.
I know. And we know that not all stress is good. Where's my buddy?
Your buddy is kind of passed out in my lap right now. He actually had a stressful day. I had to take him to the vet. I think he'll be okay. We'll find out tomorrow when we get some lab results back. But he's been stressing me out by waking me up at least once a night, if not 3 times a night, to run and get some water. He's been super thirsty for some reason in the middle of the night for about 2 or 3 weeks now. And so he's a little stressed, and now he is going into healing mode. He is passed out on my lap after a stressful day of being poked and prodded.
Oh, poor little buddy. Well, hopefully we'll get to see him before the end of the show.
I'm sure he will pop his head up.
Yeah, when it's time to eat or something. So, Michael, welcome back.
Thank you.
You are our monthly doctor, and you give us our checkup. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself for the new viewers?
Sure. As you said when you were introducing me, I am a doctor of chiropractic. I'm also a functional medicine practitioner, and I'm an avid biohacker, and I run a biohacking gym and a cellular health spa, so to speak, here in Richmond, Virginia. I focus and specialize on reducing cellular inflammation and toxicity, because all health and all sickness ultimately starts with your cells. And most of the chronic disease, especially the top 5 that everyone dies from, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, and over 150 autoimmune conditions, including things like hypothyroidism, are all diseases of cellular inflammation and toxicity. And so I specialize in helping people stop and reverse that. And the topic that we're going to talk about tonight, hormesis, has a lot to do with that. So hormesis is a term most people have not heard before, right? I didn't
know. No, I'm like on Google. What is hormesis? He said we're talking about that.
Right. What the heck is that? What the heck is hormesis?
I learn along with everyone else. So,
well, I think it's interesting because a lot of us have heard of homeostasis, right? And homeostasis is maintaining a neutral, calm balance within our body. And we usually view that as kind of the ultimate goal, to keep everything balanced. And that is important. We need homeostasis within our body. But hormesis is introducing just enough of the right kind of stressors to stimulate a positive response from our cells. And then ultimately, the cells become tissues, organs, glands, systems, and you. So if you stimulate hormesis and a hormetic response within cells, then you're going to stimulate a healing activity or a strengthening activity of those cells. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. It's important to have a little bit of stress in our lives, but not too much. And we'll talk about the differences with that.
Okay. Well, I'm ready to get started. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Cool.
All right.
So you may have heard of the father of stress, Dr. Hans Selye, talked about how when we go through a stressful reaction, we typically first to go in a state of high alarm as our stress mounts. And then if that stress doesn't really go away quickly, or sticks with us. Let's say you have a chronic pain or injury, so that pain doesn't go away. Or you have everyday stresses of a job you don't like, right? With these stresses, we can go into a resistance phase where that alarm plateaus and just keeps going and going and going. And ultimately, we know that's not good, right? We can adapt that alarm state. But if it becomes a state of resistance and is prolonged, eventually that starts to break down our cells and break down our resistance. And then we go into a state of exhaustion, right? And when we do that, that's when cells become sick, energy levels get depleted, tissues start to break down, organs and glands can't work properly, and ultimately you develop symptoms and don't feel well. And that's what we call being sick, right? But what's really being sick? Sickness really happens long before those end stage symptoms come about. Sickness is happening when we're in that long-term resistance and things are starting to break down in their function in our cells long before we're feeling it. So there's a big difference between function and feeling. And most of our healthcare and most of our self-care revolves around feeling. And we don't start doing things to help ourselves until we feel bad. But the reality is it really needs to be based on function. We need to do things to properly stimulate our body towards better function. And hormesis is one of those things. And so rather than homeostasis, hormesis is an adaptive response of the cells and the organism on the whole to short-term bursts of little bits of that alarm state of stress, but not allowing it to go long-term into that chronic resistance stage.
Okay.
So think about this. A real simple example of this that we've all done, at least most of us have done, is exercise.
Sure.
Right? Because in exercise, what's the whole point of exercise? You stress your body, but then it can recover when the repair mechanisms are taking place, which enables growth of our cells and of our tissues, growth of our muscles, growth of our cardiovascular function, our heart, our lungs working better. Well, that only comes about if we stress that to a certain degree, but don't go over that point, right?
Yeah.
Now, don't give the body enough stress, nothing happens. If you sit like a lump on the couch, nothing happens. If you give the body too much stress, bad things happen, right? You can undertrain and you can overtrain, right?
Sure.
So there needs to be that happy medium state. But there are ways to stress the body much more efficiently during that middle part of the bell curve in many different aspects in our lives, from exercise to diet to how we breathe to how we treat our body to different temperate zones. So we're going to talk about all those things tonight. We're going to break it down to 5 or 6 main categories of what we can do to stress our body just enough and some benefits of that. Okay. And so we don't overdo it. So while we're on exercise, let's talk about exercise, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So we know in previous episodes, we've talked about this amongst many other things that we're going to probably talk about tonight, but we're going to put in a little bit of a different perspective.
Okay.
So we've talked before about high intensity interval training, right? And HIIT training is talking about pushing yourself as hard as you can go, right? Stressing those cells, stressing those muscles, stressing your heart and lungs as hard as they can go, but then stopping and recovering, right? Not staying in that prolonged stress. That's why I'm a much more of a fan of short-term interval training than I am long-term training. I'm a fan of sprinting, not marathon running, right?
Okay. That's good to know. Well, what about like 5K, like 3 miles? Is that fine?
So a 5K is about as much as I'm comfortable with doing.
Okay.
Right. And as much as I think is really good for someone's body.
Okay.
Now, I know people who are runners are going to fight me on that, right? But I can
I want to hear what you have to say about it, because I feel like, we're running on pavement. We're just beating ourselves up. And, is it really necessary to run more than that,
It really isn't. You get maximum benefit from these short bursts, short sprints, and then periods of recovery, much more so than you do from prolonged. As a matter of fact, what's really interesting is when you do prolonged, what we consider prolonged cardio, like biking or running or whatever it may be, and we do that at kind of a constant long pace, that actually has been shown to have the reverse effect of what most people think they're doing it for. It actually will encourage your body to put fat on ultimately. All right. Because that prolonged stressor like that.
Can't win.
You can if you do it right.
Yeah.
You can if you do it right.
Okay,
You
go
know?
ahead.
So that prolonged stress, that prolonged running, that prolonged biking, going for 100 miles, increases your cortisol, one of your stress hormones, because it's too much of a stress for too long. And as it increases that cortisol response, ultimately, as we've learned in previous episodes together, cortisol is a fat storing hormone, right? And that's ultimately going to create an increase in your belly fat, as well as do things like raise your blood pressure, change your insulin function, your blood sugar metabolism. It's going to downregulate your sex hormones. It's going to affect brain function. So we really don't want to do this stuff long term. The short term has been shown to be really beneficial, right? Okay. So when we're doing high intensity interval training, again, there's different ways in which you can do that and get this hormetic response.
Okay.
So let's just choose whatever exercise you like to do. Let's just say it happens to be running. Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what you want to do is you want to run all out for as long and as hard and as fast as you can. And if you're really doing that, that's probably about 10 seconds, right? If you're going all out, really all out, it's about 10 seconds, 15, 20, depends on what kind of shape you're in. Yeah. But if you're running all out for a minute, you are not going all out. I'm telling you right now.
Right.
So you give it a blast, and then you need to recover. And that recovery means slow down completely, walk, or even sit down, stop, right? And wait till your breathing has completely calmed back down, your heart rate's calmed all the way back down, and you can do it again. All right. Now, there are ways you can actually measure this, and you can be very specific about it, but we're not really going to get that detail about it tonight. But just know that you want to have full exertion and full recovery before you exert yourself again.
Okay.
And it may take you a while to recover. And the recovery is actually even more important than the exertion phase.
Okay.
So don't shortchange yourself on the recovery. All right. So sit there. You're going to feel like I'm not doing anything. I'm not exercising. You are actually, by allowing your body to create the biochemical changes that were initiated by that spurt of activity that you just created.
Okay.
All right. When you do that, you're going to elicit more growth hormone and more testosterone. And that's what your body uses to repair your muscles and to improve the function of your heart and your lungs and get your tissues to grow and repair from that burst of a little bit of damage that you just gave them. All right. You're doing the same thing with weightlifting or resistance bands. I'm actually more of a fan lately of resistance bands with constant resistance. You never let let's say we're trying to do a curl, never let your arm fully to the bottom range and never bring it all the way up and let it rest. You keep a constant level of resistance with a band that is heavy enough that it's tough to do. I'm not talking about a boom, boom, boom. All right.
Right.
You want to be heavy enough that it's hard to get 15 reps out.
I actually have a HIIT class in the morning.
Okay. All right.
So now, I try to do a HIIT class every Wednesday morning.
And with your HIIT class, is that using, is that toning with resistance, or are we talking about it more of a cardio?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So we have bands. We have lighter weights. Like 5, 8, 10, 10 pounds.
Okay.
The cardio intervals and. Oh, hello, Annie. I have, this is Annie, my golden doodle. Hello, sweetheart.
We're surrounded by animals that love us.
I got the other one upstairs barking because she's upset. Can you hear her?
At first I thought that was a smoke alarm, but then I figured out it was the Chihuahua.
She is something. I apologize. Okay. Yes.
That's okay. So when you're doing resistance, if you stay too light, you're not really going to get the benefit.
Okay.
So it does need to give you a challenge. If you're not being challenged, you're not really. Look at that adorable doggy.
She wants to be held. Go on now. Yeah.
You are being challenged right now.
Right? I know. Yeah.
So if you're not being challenged by your level of resistance, it's not really going to have this effect that we're talking about. Okay. So it has to be heavy enough to do that. So again, 15 to maybe at most 30 reps. My own exercise routine, I've switched over to doing one set of each exercise to failure, right? And using resistance bands for it of a heavy resistance, which means that if I can get more than, say, 40 reps out of it, it's not heavy enough. It's not enough resistance,
Okay.
right? But I want to be able to do it. So somewhere between 15 and 30 or 40 reps, and you cannot do another rep, man. You can't go
Okay.
into an inch. That's it. Then go
All
on
right.
to the next exercise, right?
All right,
Recover
great.
and go on to the next exercise. Okay. So other than exercise, and you can do this the same way we're talking about, whether it be with resistance bands or with biking or running, going all out. What's another thing we can do to induce stress in our body? Well, you can actually even do this while you're exercising, and that's how you breathe. Okay. So when it comes to breathing, we do know through studies that if we resist or reduce our oxygen flow in or out, we make our lungs work harder. We make our cells kind of dig deeper. And this makes us get more out of the oxygen that we are taking in. So we know that we can quickly get oxygen in through our mouth, right?
Yeah.
We have a big hole here and we have little holes here. So it's harder to get it in and out your nose. But when you do it in and out of your nose, it has multiple benefits, from warming the air, filtering the air, but it also creates a chemical signaling to your brain to extract more oxygen from what you're breathing in and out than when it goes through your mouth. And when we're working out and we're working hard, what's our nature? We want to, right? But try to not do that. Try to restrict that breathing and only come in and out of your nose.
Can you give us an example?
Well, sure. I mean, just when you're exercising, instead of laboring, it's got to come through the nose. Okay. So,
yeah. So just close your mouth.
Right. Okay. So we want to just try to isolate that through nasal breathing.
Okay.
Now, within that, not necessarily during exercise, but when you're just sitting, and let's say maybe during a time of meditation, all right, just some quiet time, we can do breathing exercises that force us to hold our breath longer. There are techniques known as box breathing, right, or synchronous breathing. There's a lot of different names for it. Okay. Now, box breathing, for example, would be breathing in your nose for 4 seconds, holding it for 4 seconds, breathing out for 4 seconds, holding it for 4 seconds, like a box, right?
How often do we do that?
So if you can just sit and do this once a day and say, take anywhere, usually about 10 to 15 breaths like this, it's going to have immediate effects on reducing your stress hormones, lowering your cortisol, your adrenaline levels, activating a parasympathetic nervous system response, which initiates your healing repair mechanisms, right? So just going to this breathing mode instantly does that. It tells your brain to flip that switch.
Anybody can do this.
Right. Very easy.
So easy.
If you're feeling stress or anxiety and you stop and do this, stress and anxiety are produced by the sympathetic fight or flight mode of your nervous system, where you're raising the hormones for a stress response. It's that alarm stage. Now, if you want to recover from that alarm stage, you need to initiate the parasympathetic response, the opposite end, which is rest, repair, heal, and digest. And just by breathing like this, you can do that. Another breathing mechanism to do that is the 1:4:2 ratio. For every 1 second you breathe in, hold it for a count of 4 and breathe out for a count of 2. So it doesn't have to be a perfect box. There's different ways of doing this. And the funny thing is they all work well.
Great.
Okay. When you do this. So in the 1:4:2, if you're breathing in for 3, you're going to hold it for 12, breathe out for 6.
Okay.
The ratio of 1:4:2. So let's just try it for a second. Anybody who's watching, just try this for a second. We're going to breathe in slowly through your nose for 3 seconds. Then we're going to hold it for a count of 12. Then we're going to breathe out for 6 and try to do it all through the nose. Now, when you're breathing out, if you feel for some reason you're really challenged and you can't breathe out through the nose, you can breathe out through the mouth, but make sure you're breathing in through the nose.
Okay.
Let's do it. Let's try it now. Now I'm going to count with my fingers.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
So breathe in. Okay.
Easy.
So breathe in, and now holding it is hard.
Yeah. Well, because that's a lot.
Right. We're not used to doing that.
No.
Right. We're not used to doing that at all. But the longer you train yourself to hold your breath, the longer you can benefit the cellular exchange deep down inside your lungs and the alveoli, because we do so much shallow breathing every day, and we do so much breathing with our mouth and not our nose, that we're not getting a lot of the oxygen and the gas exchange that's so important, because your cells can't function without that oxygen.
Right.
And the more oxygen we get in there, the better we feed our cells. That gets into the part of the cells we talked about before called the mitochondria at other episodes, where the energy production actually takes place for every cell in your body to be alive and well and do its job, and ultimately to give you energy, right? And help your tissues heal and repair and function. So you have to get oxygen into that cell and into that mitochondria. And if you're not breathing in through the nose, so you get a really good biochemical trigger to extract more oxygen, if you're not holding it long enough to let the alveoli get the oxygen in and out, then we're not going to get as efficient of a gas exchange, and the mitochondria just don't have their fuel, right? They may have the food, but they don't have the oxygen. And without the oxygen, you can't have the fire, right? If you're building a fire, you need the fuel and you need the oxygen. If you don't have that, you don't get the spark. If you don't get the spark, you don't get the energy production, right? So breathing is really important in that regard, and holding your breath that way is really important. And believe it or not, you can work your way up to holding your breath for many minutes at a time.
Right.
You know, you look at these guys who are free divers, who dive off cliffs and go down, and they're down there for 5 to 10 minutes.
Wow.
Right. Of holding your breath and going down to depths of like 300 feet, which seems physically impossible, yet they do it. Right. And it just comes with practice and training and holding it longer and holding it longer and holding it longer. And with that, you get these incredible benefits. And one of those benefits is increasing blood flow to your brain and reducing things like the risk of dementia or Alzheimer's.
Wow. Okay.
Let alone just thinking more clearly on a daily basis. A lot of times we get brain fog because we're not breathing. We're not breathing properly. Okay. So taking the time to do that. Let's talk about diet.
Oh, yes. Diet.
Okay. So there's multiple things in our diet that can be hormetic stressors to our cells and enable us to actually encourage cellular restoration and repair. Now, one of those things is calorie restriction, right? Eating less has been found to dramatically improve the lifespan and health span of cells. And the more you eat, the faster your cells go downhill.
Curious.
So there is a definite benefit to caloric restriction. Now, that being said, there's also a benefit to not eating less, but eating less often. So it goes a little bit both ways. And that's called intermittent fasting. And we've talked about that before, right? And that's when you ideally would only eat or consume your calories within about a 7-hour window in your day, and give 17 hours devoted towards not having to use your energy for digestion, right? There are 4 main jobs of your intestinal system, right? Digestion, which is getting food in, breaking it down, assimilating those nutrients, making them bioavailable to your cells. Then there's elimination, which is the other end of that. After your cells have used that food that got in there, it has a process of metabolism that creates metabolic waste products that have to get removed from your body. So ultimately that gets packaged along with toxins that got ingested that don't belong, and that gets excreted or eliminated from the body. So we have digestion and elimination, and we know our intestinal system does a lot of that. Our intestinal system also focuses on immunity and controls the vast majority of the immune function for your body, and hormone production and balance. So your hormones are actually made ultimately in your glands, but your intestines are sending the signal to your brain to tell it which glands to activate. Okay. So all that hormone balance and control comes from your intestines. So if you're having immune challenges, if you're frequently sick or fatigued, if you're having hormone imbalance challenges, right? Weight, sex, stress, metabolism, if you're having toxic overload or challenges, right? And if you're not just getting good nutrients in, all happens in the intestines, and your diet plays a tremendous role in all of that.
And we did a show on gut health. Was it last month?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So really, like, if anyone wants to learn
topic.
more about that, no, there's an entire show on this.
Right. Right.
You know,
we got a lot more
to our
detail
YouTube.
about that. Okay.
Yeah. I learned so much.
With diet, with intermittent fasting, if you're not bringing that those calories in all the time and having the body devote so much energy to digestion, a lot more goes to immune system, which includes repair of your tissues and repair and regeneration of your cells, right? And breaking down old cells that don't belong. That's called autophagy, right? So autophagy is the process your immune system uses to eat old, dead, decaying cells that don't belong, or cells that have been damaged or mutated, which will become cancerous. So your immune system has to go in there and gobble those up and break them down, right?
Okay.
Now, if you're eating all the time, 3 to 5 meals plus snacks, then the energy is always being directed towards breaking the food down, and very little is being directed towards that immune repair and that autophagy, right? So,
well, it's interesting because, some say we're supposed to eat all day long, small meals, and you're saying no.
So that's not for everyone. Okay. So, and it's actually not for the majority of people. Now, there are certain people that it's important for them to eat small meals throughout the day. For example, if you're diabetic, and so your cells are having a hard time with cell signaling and getting nutritious energy-based fuel into your cells in the form of glucose, right? So if your body can't get your glucose into your cells because you have a hormone problem called diabetes or a cellular signaling problem called diabetes, then you need to have a constant level of that fuel coming in. So you have to eat more often, or else your insulin goes through big spikes, right? And that's going to be more damaging to your cells. You're trying to keep that less spiky in that insulin output. So that is one of the situations where while you're working to repair the damage that's causing your diabetes, you might still need to have some smaller meals throughout the day. All right. But let's say we're not diabetic. Okay. And if you're not diabetic, I recommend the opposite of that. I recommend intermittent fasting, only eating 2 or only 1 meal a day, which I call OMAD, 1 meal a day, right? And intermittent fasting usually means 2 meals. You could have 3 in there if you want to, but I'm talking about within 7 hours.
Right.
All right. So for most people, the easiest way to do that is to skip breakfast. And for the first time, let's say you eat around noon and then you eat dinner before 7.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Right? You covered your bases. There you go.
I don't eat before 12 now.
Right. And I think that's easiest for most people to do. You could also do it the other way around. You could have food as soon as you get up and stop eating around noon and not eat dinner. I personally find that a little bit harder to do. I like to skip breakfast myself. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And you can have tea in the morning. You can have water. You can have water with lemon, ginger.
You can have coffee, right? You just can't put cream in it.
Right. So you can use ideally, and again, there are different kinds of fasting for different purposes. So if you're really trying to do the best job of autophagy and eating and gobbling up cells that don't belong, like cancer cells, then ideally correct. You don't want to have any fat or any sugar or anything that's going to kick in the digestive process.
And that includes artificial sugar too, right?
Correct. Right.
All right. So can you tell us why?
We don't really want to use artificial sweeteners. They can actually, they've been found to actually still cause a spiking of your insulin. Now, some natural sweeteners do a much better job of not doing that, such as stevia, right? Or allulose, right? And I think we may have talked about allulose before, maybe, right? And allulose is actually an enzymatic extraction from certain things like figs or raisins or even from corn, but you're not actually getting any of that food. You're getting this enzymatic extraction used to get this sweetened chemical, a phytochemical, out of that food that makes things taste sweet, but doesn't have that insulin spiking effect. So it doesn't cause that damage to your cells.
Do I hear a dog on your end too?
No.
Oh, I guess I got some feedback from my dog.
Getting an echo effect.
She's so loud. I'm so
So
sorry.
Ralphie's still passed out and Knight's actually being really good over here. So nothing on my end.
Okay, good.
So it doesn't cause that insulin spiking. And it's really what we're trying to do is stay away from that sugar spiking, causing insulin spiking. So, and even when we do eat, right, within our 7 hours, it's ideal to keep our simple carb load and our sugar load extremely low. So again, we don't encourage a lot of insulin. The insulin hormone, which is necessary to get fuel into your cells, is also probably the most damaging hormone to our body. So when we have that in prolonged higher amounts, we've gone past that hormetic response and we're getting more into that resistance phase. And that prolonged insulin then causes our cells to kind of become deaf and just not listen anymore because it's there all the time. And we start developing resistance to it, and then we can become diabetic.
Okay.
Right. So, but the same thing can happen with all of our hormones in different ways. We can become resistant to them, and our body starts to malfunction if we have inflammation on our cellular levels. So everything we're talking about here is helping to reduce inflammation. So it's kind of funny, it produces a little bit of stress and a little bit of inflammation to cause a healing response, which then leads to a longer term reduced inflammatory response. So a little bit of a challenge to produce a response for a better long-term outcome.
Okay.
Right. Another thing I think is really interesting is that I don't think most people realize this, but we know there are certain nutrients from plants that we call phytochemicals or phytonutrients.
Yeah.
We know we're healing and reparative to our cells and really good for us. Right. So some that people probably recognize are things like turmeric or curcumin. Right. And that we know is anti-inflammatory, or resveratrol, right, which comes from grape skin, which we know actually helps lengthen the telomeres on our DNA, which are the end cap on the end of the DNA double helix strand. And that end cap or telomere determines how long that DNA is going to live, more or less, right? And once that end cap comes off, the DNA unravels and that cell dies, and and then we have cell death, and then it goes on to new cell regeneration. So we want to do things that lengthen our telomeres and help those cells live longer, healthier lives, which helps us live a longer, healthier life.
Right.
And resveratrol from grape skin, and a lot of people say, oh, that's why I drink red wine. Sorry, not so much. Yes, there is resveratrol in that, but you would need kind of the equivalent of like 70 glasses of red wine to have.
I could do that.
Right. No. Right. So we don't want to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
But we do get the benefit from when we eat the actual grapes, right? And we get the resveratrol effect.
Organic.
Right. Organic. Absolutely. Green tea is good for us. It has a substance called EGCG in it, right? And we know that is anti-inflammatory and restorative to our DNA and does lots of good things for us. And there's another chemical called sulforaphanes, which come from cruciferous vegetables, especially broccoli and broccoli sprouts, right? And those have been found to be particularly anti-cancerous, but they also increase blood flow to your cells, help create the chemistry that helps better oxygen exchange, reduce inflammation. I mean, the list goes on and on. Help you with detoxification. They encourage what's known as phase 2 detoxification in your liver, which is a biochemical process of neutralizing toxins and getting rid of them. So they're fantastic for you. Now, these are all things that people may have heard of. Yeah, I know that cruciferous vegetables are good for me. I know that turmeric's good for me and the resveratrol. But do you realize that all these things are actually toxins? Every one of those things are toxins. Okay. And they're toxins in just a small amount that create this healing response from your body.
Interesting. Okay.
So they are the perfect example of dietary hormetics.
Okay.
Induce hormesis. So if you're intermittent fasting and you're reducing your calories in that time, and you're reducing the inflammatory producing calories, which are the simple carbs and the sugars and things like that mostly, and you're eating lots of these good phytonutrients with organic fruits and vegetables, you're getting lots of hormetic hits over and over and over, which induce this healing response for your body.
And exercising.
Right.
Sprinting and taking HIIT classes.
Exactly. Right. So there's lots of little ways you can do this and combine this every day and be exponentially beneficial. And actually, when we talked about releasing the growth hormone and testosterone, which actually repairs your tissues, that's what your immune system's using to repair your cells when they're damaged, not just make your muscles bigger. You release a lot more of that if you exercise first thing in the morning without eating, and then eat later. You release hundreds % more time. Can I speak? 100 times or hundreds of % more growth hormone and testosterone if you do things this way. Right.
Oh, that's great to know, because that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons. One, I'm intermittent fasting, but the other thing is I honestly can't work out if there's anything in my stomach. I don't feel good. So I've always worked out that way, Yeah.
And I do the same thing. I just feel better that way. Right.
Yeah. So very good.
So another thing we talk about is temperature.
Yes.
Right. So we know there's lots of benefits from both hot and cold.
Mm-hmm.
So sauna, a traditional health tool for many cultures over millennium, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is sauna. Well, Dr. Rhonda Patrick is a PhD who's probably the one who's done the most research recently or speaking most about this.
Mm-hmm.
And what she says is she's not the one doing the actual research, but she's gathering all the research and making sense of it. So there are other doctors in other countries, especially in Finland, where sauna is really popular, who are looking at, okay, let's actually take blood from you and let's measure your brain function, measure your heart function, put you in a sauna for 15 minutes, look at the changes. And they're doing the actual detailed work, but then she's gathering all the data and looking at all this information from around the world and doing what's known as a meta-analysis and making sense of it all and saying, okay, look at this. This is the benefit that we get from things like sauna. And it's incredible, right? She has found that just 15 minutes of sauna once a week can reduce your risk of all-cause mortality, dying from anything, by about 30 to 40%.
What?
Yep. Because
Really?
it increases your circulation and your oxygen flow and your detoxification. All right. So if you increase oxygen flow, increase circulation, gain that oxygen to your cells, making it actually gives you the equivalent of working out. It's a cardio workout. Your heart rate will go up to about 120 to 130 beats a minute just sitting in a sauna that's hot enough between around 160 and 170 degrees for about 15 minutes. All right. So about 20.
Does it matter what time? Like in the morning, same? It just doesn't matter.
No, not that I saw.
Okay.
Right? Now, what was really interesting was there's a big jump from 15 to 20 minutes, just in those last 5 minutes, right? Where it goes from like 20% to like 30% less risk of all-cause mortality. And they broke it down. They looked at cardiac function, and risk of heart attack goes down about 30% in that time. The development of Alzheimer's goes down 30% in that time.
Wow.
Now, what gets even more interesting is if you increase the number of times a week you do that, it's just as little as just 4 times, you get the benefit of all that goes up to 68% less chance of heart attack or Alzheimer's. 68% less chance by being in a sauna 4 times a week for 20 minutes at around 160 to 170 degrees. That's not tough to do.
No.
Right? You're sitting there practicing your breathing techniques.
And you can breathe and you can meditate. And
you can do this while you're intermittent fasting. Right?
You could do some HIIT in there.
Well, no, you can't do that.
You have to sit.
Don't do HIIT in the sauna.
Don't HIIT in the sauna. No.
You will pass out. I'm telling you right now, don't do that.
Okay.
Okay.
This is why I'm not the doctor. Because I'm sitting here. I'm like, okay, I can have my turmeric. I could do my HIIT. 20 minutes. I got it.
Well, it's awesome to do the sauna after the HIIT.
Okay.
Right? Sure. To help that recovery. Look who popped up.
Hi, buddy.
I knew he'd come up eventually. Right?
I know. I'm surprised he didn't pop up because little Miss,
Well, don't forget, he's deaf, so he can't hear.
Oh, right.
Right.
Yeah. So he and my Chihuahua would get along great.
Yeah, he wouldn't mind at all.
No.
So yeah, if you combine these things in a certain order, you get even more benefit, right?
Okay.
The effects start becoming exponential when you layer these the right way.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So we know that when you go in the sauna, one of the things it does is produce something called heat shock proteins.
Okay.
And heat shock proteins are a chemical that your body uses to initiate a lot of healing and repair, right? It initiates more of that autophagy again of eating cells that don't belong. It upregulates something called reactive oxygen species, which is an oxidative stressor. Now, generally we think about that as being bad, right? And that's why we take antioxidants, because oxidation, too much oxygen to our cells, can also be damaging in certain circumstances. And antioxidants help to stop that. So when we have too much of that reactive oxygen species production, it creates something called free radicals. And free radicals are a damaged molecule or atom. So it's kind of like if someone ripped your arm off and you were a zombie, and then you want a new arm. So you attack someone else and rip their arm off and stuck it on you. And then it keeps going down the chain. Then that guy lost an arm. He has to rip off an arm off the next guy. And it keeps on going. And this creates this damage overall. So picture that happening at the atomic level in the atoms. If you remember way back in chemistry class, right? Atoms have protons and electrons and neutrons. Well, a free radical is one that has an electron torn off it. So now it's an unstable atom, right? And it's no longer going in balance. So it's going to go to the next atom and rip one of its off to one of its electrons so it can stabilize itself. Now it's okay, but the next guy's bad.
Right.
And there's damage that happens. So atoms become molecules, right? Molecules come together and become cells. So if this is happening over and over, then the cells become damaged.
Yeah. And then they replicate.
Right. The tissues become damaged and the organs and glands become damaged. The systems and then you.
Right.
So when these heat shock proteins are produced in the sauna, it helps repair all this. It produces a little bit reactive oxygen species, just enough to stimulate that healing and repair.
Okay.
But not so much to go into that whole free radical damage chain.
Gotcha.
Right? Okay. So it also, there's something called protein folding. And protein folding is one of the things that we know is highly associated with things like dementia and Alzheimer's when we have problems with protein folding. And when we have this heat shock protein, these hormetic responses, that actually helps to unfold these proteins and keep things working properly again within the cells so we don't have this tissue damage. It's just another way in which it does that, right? So all these things happen kind of simultaneously, and they release other chemicals called sirtuins, which are enzymes for cell repair and DNA repair. So the biochemistry gets really, really deep. We don't need to go into all that. Right?
That's another show.
I geek out on that. I'm like, look, we have pathways and sirtuins, NRF2 activation. But all these things are, all you need to know is this is the biochemistry that gets created by these actions that are healing and reparative, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to get that going in the body. So besides heat, we have the other end of the spectrum. We have cold. Right? So we know there's another ancient tradition of ice baths or jumping in cold water, right? And that also, believe it or not, activates heat shock proteins. Okay.
Is one better than the other?
Not really. And they
that's
each
good because I don't like
benefits.
The cold.
And it's really good to alternate between the two.
Oh,
right. So you can go from the cold bath to the sauna and back and forth a little bit. Or very simply, like I do in the shower, is I make it as cold as I can make it, and I stand under as long as I can take it. Then I make it as hot as I can make it, and stand under as long as I can take it. And I go back and forth a couple of times, and you don't stand under there very long, right? When that water is as cold as it can be, and it's going right down on the top of your head, especially if you don't have a lot of hair like this. It's painful, right?
Yeah.
And that little bit of that hormetic stressor, that pain and that cold, is initiating the biochemistry that goes into healing and repair, because it says, oh man, if this stays this way longer, I'm going to go into hypothermia, right? Well, we don't want to stay in the cold that long. I'm not talking about staying in the cold bath or going swimming in the frigid ice water. I'm talking about jump in, jump out, right? Or go in and don't stay longer than 3 minutes max.
Yeah, right? Like a polar plunge.
Right. Not really more than 3 minutes max, because then you're going to start having the damaging effects. You've gone too long.
Yeah.
Right. So get the stimulation, then get out. Right. And after the polar plunge, wouldn't you love to go to the sauna? Right. And warm up.
Right. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So you can't go back and forth. Now, traditional sauna does this very well. Also, infrared sauna has become a very popular thing lately. Right. And infrared sauna does this equally as well, but even better, infrared sauna is 6 times more effective at initiating detoxification pathways.
Really?
Because the infrared heats up the tissue from the inside, starting with a layer of fat just under the surface of your skin, rather than heating the air around you, which can get kind of stifling. It heats from the inside out, which is actually a lot easier to tolerate. And when it does it that way, it activates the biochemistry differently and activates a lot more detoxification pathways, especially through your sweat glands. Right? And your body detoxifies through many pathways of elimination. And your skin, the largest organ of your body, is full of these glands that initiate sweat to release toxins. It also is for thermal regulation, right? To help your body tolerate the heat around you. But a lot of it is for toxic release, right? And that's why it's really good to sweat. All right. Now, other ways that we eliminate toxins are through our urine, through our stool, through our breath, right? We exhale a lot of toxins. So there's different ways our body gets rid of it, but the sauna and the infrared sauna is really beneficial. That's why in my biohack zone Cellular Health Spa Center, I have multiple infrared saunas that
You do.
you don't, right? Another thing you can use along the same lines, kind of creating this same kind of change in the red spectrum, is red light therapy, right? You may have heard red light therapy, and that's very popular nowadays as well. Has multiple benefits because it uses specific wavelengths of red light to trigger something called photobiomodulation, which means it's activating those mitochondria in your cells, those energy producers, to create a lot more energy. It's speeding up their engine, right? And actually can make them much more efficient in spitting out the energy that your cells can use to heal and repair and function at their best and keep you healthy. And there's a little bit of heat that comes off the red lights, but it's really not about the heat. It's about the wavelength and the penetration. So just like the infrared, we also have far infrared is what most sauna is. That's mostly detoxifying. You also have near infrared and mid infrared and intense visible red. They all have slightly different effects on your cells in a beneficial way. That's why we mix it up. And again, in my center, we have 2 full body red light systems, and we have one specially designed for face and neck because it creates such a fast healing repair of your cell tissues in your face. It can help clear up blemishes, tighten and tone skin, get rid of wrinkles, things along those lines, right?
Oh, wow.
So,
And if you are a member of your gym, you come up with a program for people, right?
Right. Yep. So people can, when they're local and they're using my actual center, people can use it just like a gym, right? And they can come in and just, we teach you how to use everything, and you just come in and do things on your own, or they can ask for guidance, or they can say, hey, I have a particular health challenge. What's the best things for me to do? How do I integrate that with the other functional medicine work you do? How do I integrate that with diet or specific supplements or a particular detox protocol? How do I put that together? And that's all really where I come in and where I help people with guidance in that regard. And people don't have to be local to my center to even do that. I can do that with people over the phone or through Zoom. Of course, I have tools in my center that make things go faster and easier for you, but it doesn't mean you can't get a tremendous benefit from doing all these other things that you can do right at home, right?
Right. Because some of these things, you can easily buy.
Yes, right. So some
right. So you're
pricey.
just guiding them on how to use them.
Right. Some of these things tend to be pricey, and some things are really pretty affordable of what you can use at home. And so I can guide you, hey, if you're going to, where's the best way to spend your money? Get that, not this, kind of thing. So I can guide people about that and tell them where I think is a good place to buy things because I've done the homework.
Right. Exactly.
And I see so many things online that are just like, I see this thing being marketed like crazy. And when I dig down to it, I'm like, that's a piece of crap. That's really not a good tool, but they've got great marketing. So you can be easily fooled if you don't know what you're looking for, So I don't mind helping people with that. The next category we're going to talk about is exercising your brain, right? Mm-hmm. So just like you can stress your body, you can also stress your brain. And while, again, we know that chronic daily emotional stress is not a good thing, we're talking about doing little things like brain games, right? Playing actual games is fun, right? As they say, people don't stop playing because they grow old. They grow old because they stop playing, right? So it's important to challenge your brain, have fun doing it. So there are lots of brain gain apps that you can use that take you through things of trying to remember patterns or words or color sequences, words of friends and Wordle and things like that. These are all things that you can do on your own that are challenging to your brain. Even mixing things up on a daily basis, like brush your teeth with your other arm, right? With your, right? So this is a challenge that mixes things up, and you'll realize like that feels really weird,
Right.
But it's things that just make your brain work differently and think differently rather than the same pattern, which you're on autopilot and you're never challenging your brain. Learn new things.
When I broke my finger and had surgery on my right finger, and I'm right-handed, I certainly learned a lot on how to use my left hand, and nothing felt right.
Yeah, it's amazing because you do create certain neural pathways by doing the same thing over and over, right?
Okay.
So the saying is that the synapses or neurons in the brain that fire together end up wiring together. So nerves that fire together will wire together. What that means is, just like learning a new habit, the more you do it, the easier it will become because you're creating a new neural pathway that's now becoming hardwired together that you don't have to think about anymore, right? We all have some skill that we've done over and over in our lifetime since we were children that we don't think about anymore, like riding a bike. Do you think about,
no.
Do this with your foot, balance yourself this way? No, you just get on and go.
Yeah, eating with a fork.
Right. I mean,
you just don't even think about it. But if you go to do that with your left hand, it is
exactly.
or your other hand. Yeah.
Now talk about a challenge. Try to eat with chopsticks. Right. If you're not used to that, but look at cultures who do eat with a chopstick, like no problem. Right. So these are little things, just little challenges you can do to activate the neurons or brain cells. Right. Now, when you do that and you teach your brain something new, that's called neuroplasticity. Right. And that means that your brain's tissue has the potential to not only change when it learns something, but it can change in its physical function and structure to match the new things you're teaching it. So you can have new parts of your brain activate and learn new skills that weren't active before, and you're expanding on your brain's ability to function. And when you do that, that requires more blood flow. It also, so it introduces more blood and oxygen to your brain, which is good, keeps the cells healthier longer. And it creates more of a chemical called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which means that it grows new nerve cells, new neurons in your brain. All right. So when we do this, that really increases the neuroplasticity in our brain, and little things help this, not just learning something new or a new challenge, but reading more, right? Don't just sit in front of the boob tube and be a zombie, right? Take time to read, make your brain work, make your brain have to put these things together, right? Get that visual picture of what's going on. Other things, you have meditation. The act of meditation actually increases neuroplasticity. And that's where you're just sitting, using your breathing techniques, right? Calming your brain and letting your brain wander, letting it kind of go to new places. I like guided meditations because a lot of times it's helpful to hear a voice taking you from one step to the next of relaxing your body and taking your mind here or taking your mind there. There's a lot of people get frustrated when they're meditating because they feel like they can't shut things off and they can't relax. And actually, you don't have to shut things off. A big part of transcendental meditation, or TM, is letting things in, purposely not trying to block them out, because you're trying to block things out all day long. If we're trying to focus on each other right now, we don't want to focus on the chihuahua barking, right? Or if you're driving a car with the radio on, you don't want to focus more on the radio than you do on the road, right? So you're constantly having to block certain things out and force your brain to go in one direction. Well, sometimes it's healthy and helpful to just let it all in. Just sit down, let any thought come in, let any sound come in, and be okay with it. Just breathe through it. Don't get worked up by it. Okay? Learn how to calm your body in the face of stress, right? And there are tools you can use that will actually help with that as well, right? There are different apps and things that can help you through that process if you find your challenge, but you don't have to use those, right? You can do this on your own. They're just things that make it easier for you.
Right? Sure. Well, this is wonderful. We have something else.
Therapeutic interventions. Okay. So here we're talking about things like, hey, like that red light. That's a therapeutic intervention.
Right.
Along the same lines, in my office, for example, I use a red light, low level or cold laser. And low level laser speeds up the healing response of the body very quickly, right? And ultimately reduces inflammation and helps cells communicate better. So
how do you use the laser on someone?
So I use it with every patient who comes to my office for chiropractic services.
You do?
So, yeah, that's part of my treatment protocol. So I can help someone who has a pain or an area of irritation, inflammation with that. Or very often we use it to upregulate brain function and decrease inflammation in brain cells, increase that synaptic connectivity, the communication. We can upregulate your immune function with it. We can use it on organ systems. I have patients that use it on their heart because they have challenges with their heart or their lungs, and we can do that. And it helps to increase the cell energy produced by those tissues to enable those tissues to heal and function better. So when someone comes in my office for a chiropractic service, we first check their spine for any kind of dysfunction going on there, any misalignment, anything that's locking up those joints, which is irritating the nerves. We give them a chiropractic adjustment to release that nerve pressure and get the function working again in their spine. That can often give immediate relief and immediate better communication between the brain and the body because it's going through that spinal system. And if we have a misalignment or locking up in the spine, you get a misfiring that goes on, and you're not getting full brain-body communication or coordination, so you can't heal and repair. So we reset that. It's like hitting a reset button on a blown fuse in your circuit breaker at home, right? Then the next thing I do is I use a high-frequency massager that gets a focused energy that goes deep into the tissues and releases tight tendons and muscles that they've had locked out due to the stresses of everyday life. Then they get the laser treatment, right? So every person gets, it only takes 5 minutes. 5 minutes of laser treatment is an intense, focused light beam that activates the cell repair. Now, what's interesting is one of the things that light energy is doing, one of the ways in which it works is creating a little bit more of that reactive oxygen species we talked about before. A little bit of damage to stimulate more repair. And it doesn't feel like anything. It doesn't hurt. You actually don't feel it at all. But people can sometimes tell me, ooh, I feel like a tingling or a warmth. That's not the laser. That's the biochemistry and the circulation changing because of the laser.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? So the laser has no sensation to it at all, which is why they actually call it cold laser, not because it feels cold, but hot laser is a term you give to laser that cuts or burns skin, like surgical laser or tattoo removal laser, and that you feel.
Yeah.
Cold laser penetrates through, goes deep into the tissues and activates this healing response without any sensation. But people can feel it if they're very sensitive because they're feeling the healing, actually. Now, another form of therapeutic intervention that has become popular lately is dry needling. And we were just talking about that right before we went on, that you had experienced from dry needling. And
that's amazing.
So what that is similar to acupuncture in the sense that they're thin needles, right? Like acupuncture needles are very, very thin needles. And so are the needles used for dry needling, but dry needling needles go deeper and they're for a different purpose. They're actually designed to get in there and poke around and kind of get things a little angry in there to stimulate a healing response. So that's a hormetic stimulus. You're making things a little angry, producing a little bit of stress, just enough to get the body go, oh, pay attention here. Something's angry here. Let's initiate that healing response. So it doesn't go into a prolonged, plateau of aggravation or irritation with prolonged pain or anything like that. And it's a little uncomfortable, right?
Well, no more uncomfortable than the injury itself. And that's how I look at it. And definitely worth it. I had a bad ankle, and after 3 treatments, I was running again. So
yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I don't practice it myself, but I know that some chiropractors do, and a lot of physical therapists do it. And I'd rather refer people to the ones who are the experts at that. I do what I do, let them do what they do.
Right, of course.
Right? But I see the benefit of it for sure. And so those are some things that can be used that way in order to initiate that. Another therapeutic intervention like that is prolotherapy, where they might inject an old injury that doesn't seem to be healing anymore and has plateaued and might have a lot of scar tissue with something like saline and just like salt water, but you're injecting it right into the area, which again makes it angry.
Okay.
Right? And again, it stimulates a healing response. That's called prolotherapy. So there's different ways in which this can all be done medically, which is considered more cutting edge, right, type of healing interventions.
Well, this is amazing. What an incredible show, because I learned so much today.
Well, cool. Good.
Yeah.
These are all little things. I hope that you can have, maybe you can have a hormesis party and have your friends come over.
I know. I'm so sad I don't live in Richmond anymore, because I really want to hang out at your gym. I would be a member there every day, but now I'm going to have to get a sauna and infrared lights, and I'm going to change how I run.
Yeah, it's just a lot better on your body to do that.
Sure.
Besides the whole hormetic thing we were talking about with the interval training, there's also a certain technology, like I have in my office, which is called REHIT, which is reduced exertion, high intensity interval training.
Okay.
So what that means is you are doing that intensity, right? But it's not for very long periods of time. And using a very specialized exercise bike I have that measures your heart rate variability, and that's something we can also talk about another time. It gives your body the perfect amount of resistance to maximize the output from your heart for every second of that workout. So you'll never underwork, but you also never overwork.
And is it, you're hooked up to it? Like there's a monitor so it can?
No, so actually it's reading it through, just like on an exercise bike that reads your heart rate with the handlebars.
Yeah.
It's doing the same thing, but it's reading this heart rate variability, which is the timing between the beats. So your pulse is the number of beats. The heart rate variability is the timing between the beats.
Okay.
And you actually want that to be variable. You want it to be adaptable. You want it to be ever changing. And the more variable it is, the healthier you are. And the better your balance is between your fight or flight response of sympathetic and your rest and repair response of parasympathetic. So the better balance you have there, the higher your heart rate variability. So it's a direct indicator of that. So when you do things that increase your heart rate variability, like better, deeper sleep, doing interval training, this all increases your heart rate variability. Meditation increases your heart rate variability. When you do that, it gets better balance to that sympathetic and parasympathetic system, so your body's able to heal and repair maximally, right? But when you do rehit, super cool technology gives you the equivalent of a 45-minute spin class in 8.5 minutes.
What?
Yep. That's all it takes. And it's been scientifically proven. We can show that it pulls all of the blood sugar right out of your bloodstream, pulls it right out of your muscles, which normally takes about 20 minutes of running to do. Activates the hormones that reduce your cortisol, helps your insulin-like growth factor, which helps with your body's metabolism, reduces your stress hormones, reduces bad sex hormones, reduces bad estrogen that would lead to breast cancer, increases blood flow to your brain, helps insulin be much more effective in your body. So, the benefits are incredible and really reduces that growth hormone testosterone again, right?
Wow.
And so if you do it right, you don't have to do a lot, right? You just got to do it right. So yeah, interesting stuff. Lots of interesting stuff out there.
I know. We could talk all night, but we're coming up on the hour.
Yeah.
And I want to send people to your website at drwildcanhelp.com. And tell us, Michael, what will we find when we go to your website?
So if you go to my website, as you said, drwildcanhelp.com, one of the first things you're going to notice on the homepage is a button that says book a free consult. And I'm always willing to give 15 minutes to anyone who wants to talk about whatever their concerns are or questions they have. And you can pick my brain and it can help you out and give you direction. If you're having a particular health challenge, of course, I'd love to help you if I can. And I help a lot of people all around the country. You don't have to be local. I do a lot of my functional medicine work through the phone or through Zoom.
Yeah, that's how it works for us.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of ways I can help people with all kinds of challenges, hormone imbalances, fatigue, anxiety, digestive issues, severe issues like cancer, diabetes, heart disease. I have protocols that I've developed over my 30 years in practice. They're very efficient and effective at really helping your body heal at the cellular level, right? Because if you heal better, you'll ultimately feel better, but you'll really be better.
And one of the coolest things that you have, I think, are the variety of tests that you have. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We have a lot of tests that your average doctor won't do. We test everything from blood to urine, saliva, stool, anything we need to get the information, get the clues we need so we can target the underlying root causes of your health problems. I'm not interested in treating symptoms. I'm not interested in helping you just feel better. I'm interested in actually helping fix you. And so if you target what's wrong by doing the right tests, then you can actually repair what's wrong. Other than here's a pill, just feel better, come back when you don't. That's not
right. So when someone books a consult, they'll tell you what their symptoms are.
Right.
And from there, you'll
suggest. So in our
suggest.
conversation, we can narrow down where I think your problem might be coming from. And then I might recommend very specific tests so we can identify exactly where that's coming from, right? So I might mail you a test kit if I want you to do a saliva test or a stool test. Or I might email you a requisition form to go to your local LabCorp and get some blood drawn. Or I might have you go to a specific draw station if it's a specialty lab that's going to do high-end advanced work that LabCorp simply doesn't do. So we can arrange all these things. And
it's so simple.
It's very simple, and it can be very inexpensive as well. Some of the initial tests we do start as low as $20.
Yeah. And there's no, you're not going to the doctor's office, waiting rooms, all of that. It's super efficient. And like Michael said, you will not find these tests at the doctor's office. Right. So
actually something I'm working on right now that maybe you and I can talk a bit more because I'd love some feedback. I'm playing with the idea of creating more or less an app that would help you guide you through all these types of things. So basically, as I kind of think of it, as like a functional medicine practitioner at your fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
So at any time you have a question, you can go to this app, which will go through a series of questions or surveys that say, okay, based on what your answers were, I want you to start thinking about this. And here are some very specific targeted dietary plans for you, and shopping lists and meals and recipes and how exactly to do it, day by day, step-by-step instructions for the next month.
Mm-hmm.
And if we need to go further, here are the tests I would recommend that we do, and here's how you get them. And if I think you need specific supplementation, this is exactly what I want you to use and when to use it and how to order them. So I'm trying to make things as easy as I can for people to make it simple, right? Because complexity stops you from acting, right? So the more simple we can make it, the more likely you are to actually do it. And so I'm working on it. We'll see.
I think it's a wonderful idea. So again, everyone, if you want to book a free consultation with Dr. Wild, go to drwildcanhelp.com and click on free consults, and this gentleman will personally call you back.
Absolutely.
It's just that simple.
Perfect. Good ending.
All right. I know. All right, my friend. I have to go grab the Chihuahua out of her room. Okay. No babysitter.
I have to walk my boys now too.
I know. Okay. Thank you so much. I will see you next month.
All right. My pleasure. And we'll think of another fun topic between now and then.
I know. All right. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into V-Talks. And I hope you enjoyed our show with Dr. Michael Wild. I know I learned a lot of new big words. I always get so smart when I talk to him. We will be back next week with another topic, another show, another guest. So please tune in every Tuesday night live at 7 p.m. Hope you all have a good night. Thank you, and bye-bye.